I have here the Ghost of Virginia. I've been obsessed with this since I found it about 4 years ago. The building at the Fish Market restaurant at 105 King Street in Old Town, Alexandria, like 5 minutes away from where I live, dates to the 18th century, where it was used as a warehouse for storage of incoming ship cargoes. But what about the ghostly activity? Most of it seems, happens when the patrons have left and the restaurant is closing. And I'm sure those of you that work in the restaurant industry across the world, but specifically in the Northern Virginia area, because it's old, it's colonial, there's a lot of history here, have your own stories about things that have happened when you're closing shifts and you might be by yourself and eerie things happen that you can't quite explain. For example, female bartender, Femme, is getting ready to lock up and go home one night when she heard a strange noise behind the bar. She said it sounded like ice cubes being rattled around in a sink. Then suddenly, as if someone unseen had flung them, a batch of cubes was tossed across the bar and shattered across the wall. She was alone though. Another time, 3 witnesses all saw a glass slide across the bar counter on its own. Perhaps the most frightening manifestation occurred, however, just before closing time to a night manager as he was walking past a wooden portrait of a naval officer, which hangs on the second floor wall. He stopped in shock. It had somehow become unhooked and was levitating a foot away from the wall itself. Then it crashed to the floor. It did not fall, but in the manager's own words, it appeared to have been flung to the ground with great force, thrown, in other words, by an apparition. Upon examination, he found the wire in the back of the frame was still attached to it, though, which means he was seeing a recurring haunting. A residual haunting is just an imprint of a memory that's happened before, enough to whet the appetite of SEARCH, Supernatural Entity Anomaly Research and Cryptid Hunters, a group that investigates paranormal activity in our area, Northern Virginia. They came to the area twice. They ran tape recorders and they snapped photos and they took other measurements with sophisticated instruments, right? But the most telling clue came in the form of a red splotch in a photo that appeared to be floating near the mysterious portrait that the night manager had seen on the second floor. And then they offered no rational explanation as to who was doing the hauntings because after the second examination, all has gone quiet since 2004. The ghosts apparently do not want to be revealed, and perhaps they're at peace. There's another place where paranormal enthusiasts can spend the night, back in the day anyway, in the hopes of meeting up with something supernatural. Only, this isn't a hotel, motel, or bed and breakfast. It is a museum. The historic Weems Bott Museum in Dumfries, south of Dale City and Woodbridge in Northern Virginia. Readers of past editions may recall the chapter on the site in Volume 7, and the building is named for 2 of its original owners in the 19th century. Reverend Mason Locke Weems is perhaps known as the first biographers of President George Washington, founding father. And he sold the property in 1802 to a well-known at the time defense attorney Benjamin Botts, so Weems Botts. Neither figures in the reported hauntings here. Those are attributed to members of the merchant family who came later in 1869. Those were 2 daughters. The youngest, Mamie, was epileptic. And in those days, many thought, because of ableism, that affliction was either a disease of madness, and I think that's important to note on Halloween. A lot of the sightings and spirits that have been mentioned, they were just simply misunderstood, and they had mental illness. If they were in more compassionate times, perhaps things would be different. Consequently, Mamie was kept away in an upstairs bedroom, and after Mamie and her father unfortunately passed in the early 1900s due to, I'm sure, several epidemics, like COVID now, the older sis, Violet, had to live out her days taking care of Mom, who lived to be 98. And the museum believes the ghostly manifestations occur because of those 2 sisters. A sense of sadness. The leader of a Boy Scout troop said he once saw a vision of a young woman who asked him where her rocking chair had been. The merchant daughter from the 1800s. And it was later learned that she did indeed have a rocking chair in her room. Copy of Elise Lathrop's 1927 book, Historic Houses of Early America, which includes passage on Castle Hill's ghost. There is mention of additional supernatural activity not previously covered as follows. This is not the only ghost story connected with the place, Castle Hill and Abelmar. Not far from the entrance is a hollow. No horse can be induced to pass through this hollow after dusk. A party of children of another member of the family, picnicking in here, lingered until the sunset, and none had ever heard any tales of a haunted hollow near Castle Hill, but suddenly one of the children looked up and said, "What a funny looking carriage." Later, she added, "And see how funnily the rest of the ladies are." But the others saw nothing. Later, the child described what she had seen, and the description was that of an old-fashioned coach. The tales of long ago.